Hey guys, welcome back to A Vintage Halloween. So today I want to talk about one of my favorite types of books, which are like true ghost story books, and three that I think are just so fab and awesome and that everyone needs to read and have in their library. So the first one, this is a series of books that are just really fun, and I know there's like, you know, like Spooky New England, Spooky Massachusetts, Spooky Vermont, Spooky. I think they did like one for almost every state, I'm guessing. But this one is called Spooky New England. It's by S.E. Schlosser. And it's so delightful. So let me read the back to you. Okay, here we go. Pull up a chair or gather around the campfire and get ready for 30 creepy tales of ghostly hauntings, eerie happenings, and other strange occurrences in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. Set in New England's historic towns, charming old islands, and sparsely populated backwoods, the stories in this entertaining and compelling collection will have you looking over your shoulder again and again. Yankee folklore is kept alive in these expert retellings by master storyteller S.E. Schlosser and an artist Paul Hoffman's evocative illustrations. You'll meet seaweed-covered phantom sailors and a ghostly black dog, which we love. Hear otherworldly voices and things that go bump in the night and feel an icy wind on the back of your neck on a warm summer evening. Whether read around the campfire on a dark and stormy night or from the backseat of the family van on the way to grandma's, this is a collection to treasure. So this is a collection that is so fun. It's so enjoyable. But it's not like real life ghost stories. They're not interviewing people. People aren't recounting like their real life experiences. This is like fiction. It's sort of fiction based on legend. And one of the, they're like from ghost stories to sort of quirky, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened stories. One of them involves this man coming home in his wagon. And it's like a big storm out, and like his horse, you know, it's just his carriage and his horse, and they're coming home. And so he is like, the horse like stops at this like swirling river and like won't go any further. And the guy's like, no, come on, we need to go home. Like it's pouring, keep going, little horse. We need to get home. So the horse just, you know, goes across and they get home and everything. And his wife is like, how did you get home? Like the bridge has been washed away. And he was like, no, it's not. We went right across the bridge. I don't know what your issue is. She's like, that's not funny. Like there's not even a plank on the bridge. I don't even know how you got across. So he's like, well, I did. So whatever. So the next morning, the neighbor comes in and is like, oh, I'm glad you're back. Good to see you're back. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, I heard the bridge is supposed to be out, but we crossed it last night. And the neighbor's like, the bridge is out. Let me show it to you. And so they went to the bridge. There were only 2 ropes like stretched across. I guess it was like a rope bridge, and they took the planks off, and there was tons of mud on the rope. The horse had crossed the bridge on the rope section. So, I mean, that one's not exactly spooky, but, you know, there's a sort of a mix in these books. That's why they're delightful. Like, some of them are scarier than others. I remember one, I think it was in Spooky, Massachusetts, maybe, and not in this exact volume, but about this couple who's like, I think pet like had a, you know, veterinary emergency, and so they were trying to find the vet's office, and like they couldn't find it, and the nearest location they couldn't find was closed, and it was like late at night, and so they ended up at this like country farmhouse, and the couple that opened the door were dressed in like Victorian era clothing, and the guy was a doctor and everything, and I guess he like patched up their dog. I'm not sure if the dog survived or not, I can't remember, but the house didn't exist. The house had been torn down like 100 years earlier, and like the couple that helped them like were not alive. So, I mean, it's fun. I love, you can always find your version for the area that you live in, but these are just a fun series. I got this one on Amazon. You can order, you can find your own city, you can find your own state, where you live, but they're just real fun, delightful. And they're fiction, so they're not like, you know, true life. They're lighter. You can read these to kids like easily. Okay. Second one. The second one is sort of like a classic among like the sort of, you know, New England folklore, lore groups of people, and it's called Passing Strange by Joseph Citro. And this is a good one. I'll read you the back. It says, strange but true tales from the Bard of the Bizarre. So Joseph Citro is a folklorist. Like he's well known as like one of the master researchers, historians of this type of genre. So I think he's written more than one book. Okay. This delightfully spine-tingling tour of New England chronicles the haunted history and folklore of a region steeped in hardship and horror, humor and pathos. George A. Citro takes you to real-life ghost towns, describes proven cases of vampirism, and tracks down uncanny but true mysteries that remain unexplained to this day. So it's good. It's very like researched. It's very, it's not like this. This is like just, you know, short stories you read. This is very much like the true account, heavily researched, really bizarre stories. Like one of them, this is sort of gruesome, but like one of them, Roger Williams, the founder of Rhode Island, like when they were like, I think like they decided to replace his headstone, like years, like centuries after he was buried, and they like, there was no body in his grave. And they figured out that the local apple trees had like consumed his like remains. Yeah, but it's like a whole researched, interesting, it's like really quirky, unheard of stories. So if you're very familiar with a lot of like ghost stories from New England, this one has a lot of ones you've probably never heard of, which is really interesting. I got this on I think I got it on Amazon maybe, but it's pretty thick too, so it can, you know, be nice for a boring evening right now when we're sitting at home. There's that one. And then of course the creme de la creme, my favorite of all ghost story books. You know it, this is, I have to give the backstory. So as you know, if you follow me on Instagram, I've mentioned this book many times, but I want to give you the story. If you have not heard the story of how I got this book, I will tell you. I was, of course, obsessed with ghost stories as a kid, and I grew up in Littleton, Massachusetts, and so we would go to the mall. It's called Pheasant Lane Mall in Nashville, New Hampshire. And so this was like the mall in like the 80s and like 90s. Like this was like the coolest mall. So like it was always a big deal. Like if we got to go to the mall on a Friday night, like that was like so exciting. It was so fun. And so this particular night, it was like in, you know, in the fall, and at Borden bookstore. Oh wait, no, it was B. Dalton. It was B. Dalton. So at B. Dalton bookstore, I saw this book, and the cover art alone is redonk. And I was like, oh my gosh, can I please have this book? Pretty please. And my dad got it for me. And it's called Haunted Heartland by Beth Scott and Michael Norman. Look at that cover alone. The cover alone is just so spooky. Like, it's just so spooky. Look at that. Masterful. So this is like a whole very well researched true ghost story volume. This duo has written a bunch of different books. I also have like the Haunted, I think it was Haunted Midwest. I don't know. I read another one that was just equally as good, and I used to like read that at lunch, you know, at work and everything. It was equally as good. But this one as a kid, like I love this. This is not my copy. My copy was probably tossed like, you know, years ago, as things are from childhood get tossed. But I found this in Barnes & Noble a couple years ago. Like this is the exact hardcover edition I had. And so I think I'll just read. I think I'll read the inside cover because the back is just a quote. Here we go. Haunted Heartland is a compendium of the unbelievable and the fantastic. Ghosts, haunted houses, possessions and exorcisms, vanishing people, mysterious lights, spontaneous combustions, poltergeists, and dreams of premonition. Authors Scott and Norman have collected over 150 true ghost stories from America's heartland: Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, Ohio, and Wisconsin. What is perhaps most striking about Haunted Heartland is that each of these stories originated in these supposedly peaceful states. Woo! From haunted mansions in Ohio to a Nebraska classroom lost in time, and from haunted manganese mines in northern Minnesota to ancient specters wandering the Ozark Hills of Missouri, Scott and Norman lay to rest the notion that hauntings appear only in moss-draped southern plantations or shuttered clapboard cottages along the Maine coasts. All of the incidents have been reported as fact to the authors. Whatever the tale or whatever the locale, the stories in Haunted Heartland will cause you to stop and ponder the perplexing world of the supernatural. So this is so good. Like these books, I like these because they're not as long. Like Passing Strange has like much longer sections to get through. These are shorter stories, and they're just equally well researched. And they're all like true life stories. So like, it's like people's first account interviews of like what they saw, what happened. Of course, the one that terrified me as a child, it's called Resurrection Mary, and it's a story that originated in the Chicago area. So apparently Mary, like around the turn of the 20th century, or maybe like into the 20s, like she was leaving a dance and she was killed in a car accident. And so people who are driving around like a certain cemetery, they like will see like a woman in white on the side of the road asking for a ride, and they will pick her up and drive her home. It's like one of the classic vanishing hitchhiker, you know, legends. They will pick her up and drive her home, and she'll disappear like in the car. I'm gonna look up that story right here, see if I can read it. Haunted Chicago. Okay, so she's entombed in Resurrection Cemetery in Archer Road in Justice, Illinois. Okay, she died on her way home from an automobile accident on her way home from a dance in 1934. Mary first made her presence known in 1939, 5 years after her death, when motorists complained that a mysterious girl in a formal gown tried to jump onto the running boards of their automobiles. In some cases, she hitched rides to the O. Henry Ballroom, where she had last been seen dancing. On those occasions, no one suspected that Mary was anything but mortal. She would dance all night with some of the single men who frequented the night spot, but when she was always quiet and vague about where she lived. Aloof was the word most often used by her dancing partners. Her escorts would later say her skin was icy cold. Oh my God. So I totally forgot the part that like people like danced with her all night and then she like was a ghost. I don't know how much of that is true or how much of it is legend, but that's what we love. We love it. Let's see. Okay. Bear with me. After the last dance, Mary would ask for rides and she would direct her impromptu beaux to head north on Archer Avenue. She usually disappeared from the vehicle as it passed Resurrection Cemetery. There's a part where she disappears. Most of the time, she didn't bother with the formality of opening the door, but Mary was not always discourteous. She kissed at least one man goodnight. At other times, Mary asked the driver to stop just short of the cemetery, got out of the car, and vanished as she ran through the locked cemetery gates. That's when her escort knew he was the Resurrection Mary. So this story as a kid, like, I'm like, oh my God, that's terrifying. Like, I want to go to Chicago. Of course, I've never been to Chicago yet. I do want to go. But yeah, it's like one of those vanishing hitchhiker stories are really, really haunting and creepy. And, like a lot of the stories in here are easy to read. They're fast paced, they're interesting, they're very well researched. So highly recommend. Try to get less glare on it. So again, we have Haunted Heartland, Passing Strange, and we have the Spooky series, Spooky New England. So 3 of these are so fun to start with if you're looking for real life sort of ghost story books to get started with your, collection. We have so much time now. We can read whatever we want. So yeah, I think those 3 are fun. And if you've read them, let me know what you think. And if you order them, let me know what you think, because I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the books as well. But anyway, so that is my video for today. I hope you guys are staying safe out there, and I'll talk to you later.